This is my third video of attempts to make a soap that looks like the Northern Lights or the Aurora Borealis. It's at least my fifth attempt at making such a soap, but I've videoed two previously. And as I said in those videos, while they're pretty soaps, they don't look naturally like an Aurora. So I've been looking at other people's Aurora soaps on YouTube, and I want to acknowledge and thank Lacey at Sassy Turtle Soapworks, who uses an in-the-pot-swirl without stirring it. That's probably the most realistic Aurora look in a soap that I've seen yet. So I'm using a slight modification on her method. I'm going to do this in a slab mold rather than a loaf mold, slightly different colorants, but otherwise it should be similar, and I'm hoping it'll get more of that natural Aurora look about it. This is the recipe that I'm using. It should be fairly slow to trace. I'm using Nature's Garden bayberry fragrance oil, which is said to accelerate. So I wanted a slow-moving recipe, and I'm also going to soap with it fairly cool, hopefully close to room temperature. I am going to use some sodium lactate to harden the bars a bit, about a teaspoon per pound of oils. And then these are the colorants and fragrance that I'm using. For the main batter, which is going to be the great bulk of the batter, I want it to be a very dark blue. This is another change from previous Aurora soaps that I've made, where I've used a black sky. I know when you do a long exposure with a camera of an Aurora, often the background sky turns out very dark blue rather than black, even though to the naked eye it might look black. So I'm using a half teaspoon of black oxide along with 2 teaspoons of Klein blue mica. That's a very dark blue mica. Another teaspoon of ultramarine blue mica. And then once that's mixed up, I plan to add a teaspoon and a half of titanium dioxide powder and just lightly whisk that in to create what should look like stars in the batter. I've done that in a previous video. And then for the colors of the Aurora itself, I'm going to try for a rather bright yellowish green, which is the Celadon green mica, a almost white but slight greenish tinge using winter white mica plus new leaf green mica, and then a hot pink using Hollywood pink mica, and a deeper purple using purple vibrance mica. All of those micas are from Nurture Soap. And then, as I said, I'm using Nature's Garden bayberry fragrance oil, and that's at a 0.7 ratio. In the mixing pot, I'm planning to pour my colors in this order. So if this were a clock, I'm going to pour the purple at 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock, the hot pink at about 1:30 and 7:30, the green at about 3 and 9 o'clock, and the light green, almost white, at about 4:30 and 10:30. So that will give a nice continuous mixture of those colors in approximately the order that they can occur in some Auroras. Once I've poured those in that way fairly deeply, then I'll come back and do some more shallow pours, probably more in a swirl or a spiral rather than dropping them straight down in the pot. These oils and the lye are just a little over 100 degrees. The oils are already clouding up a little bit as if they're solidifying, so I hope that's not going to be disastrous. I want to get them mixed. So I already have sodium lactate in the lye. I've already put the fragrance oil into the mixed oils. Looking like a really nice emulsion, and it's not thickening yet. I'm going to use about maybe 3/4 of a cup of batter for each color. My little measure is half a cup. noticed that I tend to make a mess when I make soap, so I try to line everything with newspaper ahead of time. This is my mixture of blue and black that's going to go back in the main batter. So I'll just put some soap in there, mix it up, and then pour it back. Well, that fragrance oil is said to accelerate, but I'm seeing no acceleration at all at the moment, so I'm going to dare to stick blend these things a bit. It's a pretty nice consistency, really. It's kind of like good chicken gravy. Going from the green to the pink, I'll rinse off the blender. Sucking air in and not blending as well as you'd like it. That shade of blue for a night sky. I'll get my titanium dioxide. I'm not really measuring this accurately. I said I'd use a teaspoon and a half. I'm going to use a nice heaping teaspoon. And just kind of sprinkle it over the top there. And then I'll just whisk that in with a hand whisk. And hopefully, if it keeps the little specks of titanium dioxide, that will look like stars in the sky. That works. I've done that with several soaps and it works pretty well. So I don't want to mix it too much. I think that we're going to call that done. And then purple at 12 and 6 o'clock. And hot pink at about 1:30. 7:30. The bright green at about 3 and 9 o'clock. Of course, this is from my perspective. You're probably seeing this backwards. And the very light green at about 4:30 and 10:30. And then in reversed order, I'm going to just kind of pour this not as deep and just kind of randomly around. Because I like to have some of each color at all depths in this pot. This is my mold that makes 9 8.5 ounce bars, which I'll plan to cut in half. So I'll end up with 18 approximately 4 ounce bars. And I'm going to pour this lengthways. Just kind of go back and forth. Well, I wish that little black at the end weren't there, but the rest is a nice, rather Aurora looking swirl, I think. I'm going to let this sit out now for, well, until it really starts saponifying, and I'll spray it with isopropyl alcohol to lessen the chance of soda ash on it. And then after it's had a while, I don't know, maybe half an hour, I'll put it in the oven at 170 degrees and CPOP it for probably a couple hours. Here it is looking straight down on it right after it's poured. As I said, I don't like that little blob at the very top left, but down here, it's going to see me in the reflection, can't you? Down here, I think that has kind of a nice Aurora look about it, and definitely some titanium dioxide stars. So I'm liking that look so far. Here is the soap fresh out of the oven. It's got kind of a purple frothiness on the top. I don't know if that has to do with my having sprayed it with the isopropyl alcohol or not, but once it's thoroughly cool and hardened, I'll have to shave that off. This soap is about 24 hours old. It still has quite a rough surface on it, which I'll have to remove. This is my 9-bar mold from Papa's Woodcraft. He sells on Etsy, so it has miter cuts in the sides, which is nice for making very uniform shaped bars and nice straight cuts with a knife. Bars, and once I remove them, I'll plan to cut them in half to make 18. I cut these in half to make 18 bars. I'm going to use the mold with the miter cuts in it again. I'm going to line that with some paper towel, just because this soap is still rather sticky. And then I just kind of eyeball with the miter cut what would be halfway. And I can easily do 2 at a time that way. because they have that very rough top surface, I'll slice that off with a cheese slicer. Here are the finished bars. I've cut the slab into 18 and I have shaved off the tops. So these are top sides after the rough stuff has been removed. That streaking of the titanium dioxide will that'll wash away first time the soap is used. I think that looks kind of like an Aurora. So those are tops. These are cut sides. And then bottom surfaces where the soap was against the floor of the mold. I think that also has a nice astronomic look to it. And then the ends of the bars when they're cut. So overall, I'm pretty pleased with it. I really think that could be an Aurora in a sky. I like that. I like this one a lot too.